welcome back. Hope that was a productive conversation. I'd like to hear from each of the groups about what direction you decided upon or began to think about in that discussion. So if we could start with what we make, buy and waste. Where did you end up in your discussion? And Jessie's going to take notes to record where we're starting here today. Who's going to speak for the make, buy and waste group?
Want to do it, Bob? Well, I'm happy to, Kelly, as you're most involved in that. Yep. Ah. Okay. Okay, you go ahead.
Go for it.
We've got a lot of talking. We actually, what we're doing at the moment within, we cross over every area of grassroots and education advocacy, connecting dots. We're completely crossing over. We are very interested in increasing the education side of stuff. And I am, well, we all are actually, or three of the four definitely were. I mean, it's not that we aren't. And we were looking at including schools in our waste system, whether it was getting kids to join classes on how to take something apart or putting it back or seeing what's inside, creating more. And when we have the Repair Cafe, Carlo and I were actually talking yesterday about getting a lot of stuff about the forum, other groups you can contact. I mean, it ticks every box actually. So
great, thank you.
A lot going on.
So all of the projects you talked about in your introduction earlier on, that you reckon that's going to fill all those boxes beautifully. I agree.
Absolutely no problem. Yeah.
Thank you. How we get energy?
Hello. Yeah.
Adrian?
We mostly talked about yeah, our main focus now will be on writing up on how writing up suggestions on how other groups can reduce their energy usage and why that's important. And yeah, we need to reach out more and try and grow our group again because it's minuscule now.
So your two projects will be working with the other groups, and did you talk about the community energy one as a kind of grassroots action approach?
We did talk about reaching out to people outside the forum too.
Cool. Okay, thank you. Where we live and work.
There was just two of us in our group, so I'm hoping we're going to get more people later. We're sort of focused on the library at the moment, and that's mostly through advocacy, talking to the councils, trying to find out ways of helping them, which is more useful than getting particularly, too confrontational with it. And of course, education is needed so that both central government and local government believe that the public is behind them to do the difficult things that they need to do to get to survive long term, rather than just making short-term decisions all the time, which seem okay just for the next few years, but it will be completely unsustainable long term, both for carbon and for money.
So just can I just clarify, Jenny, that sounds like a project about development at sea level?
Yes, 100 years.
That could include the library and other development around the region.
Yep.
And that would have an education and an advocacy focus?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. Did you discuss any other projects?
No, we just agreed with ourselves.
Lovely, thank you. Anybody from the Move Ourselves and Our Stuff Around group? Thanks, Jo.
Great. Yes, in terms of joining the dots, we were talking about particularly moving kids around to schools. So the dots would be to schools and also to councils as enablers to make things happen, and to young people. And Yuki and Jenny yesterday, I think, were engaged with young people at Nelson Girls College who apparently felt rather stymied, and that bothered us. We wanted to find ways to help them move forward with their efforts, particularly in relation to transport. In terms of action, the school travel plans that councils are already beginning work on seemed like something that we could get behind, but we thought the third action area of education was kind of missing, that it needs big splash public education on mode shift. It needs positive images about mode shift, and you know, just lots more out there. And we hoped that the transport group might focus on something like that. And it would involve advocacy to councils to enable things to happen. That's
Okay,
it.
thank you. So it sounded to me like there were 2 projects in there, one about modal shift education advocacy and outreach, and another relating to schools in particular. Yeah, great, thank you. How we support nature and store carbon.
It's me, Debs. So we started, one of the first things, by sharing our convener role, because it's been Chris in the past, so sharing it around a little bit. So we had a really good discussion and welcomed, it was mainly our ecosystems and biodiversity group, but welcomed in a few new people who come particularly with the carbon sequestration in mind. So it's really building that dot, connecting some dots already. I guess the key thing coming out of connecting dots was working with other groups in the community, and we were talking about nominating connectors within our groups to actually do that. So with other groups within the forum, but also more broadly in the community for things around like long-term plans and strategies that are occurring in the kind of biodiversity carbon sequestration place, making sure we connect up there. In terms of the grassroots action, you've heard about Snowdon's Bush. We thought one aspect of it could be involving the forum in a climate resilient planting activity to support Snowdon's Bush. If that comes off the ground, we're still waiting to see where that's at. And then another one around quantifying sequestration, and issues were raised around, you know, supporting buffers around parks, the urban areas, and someone suggested the Climate Change Commission report is talking about planting 1,000 hectares per year. Where would that be? Which would be for Tasman? Where would that be? So we think we need to have conversations around what that might look like, particularly with things like the land use groups and across different environments like the urban environment as well. And then it was also raised around browse animal pest control. There's some research coming out on that about reducing browsers, how that actually helps with natural forest regeneration and carbon sequestration. In terms of education, a really good point that was raised is we often think about education around schools, but we were thinking about educating adults in our community as well, that there's a lot of expertise in our community and that could potentially be used for things like little clip-on modules that we could teach at NMIT, say, for example. And then to the bigger thing like the longer term climatorium that kind of Nelson's talking about, what are we thinking around that? And then finally around advocacy, just coming back to that notion of if we're well connected, we can write submissions on things like long-term plans, but if we're well connected into other strategies and processes, we can influence them before it hits submission stage, which, to be honest, is where you're going to make the biggest bang for your buck, affecting it before it gets to that stage. And so thinking about it from the kind of biodiversity sequestration, you know, our climate change protection adaptation around biodiversity, putting a climate change lens through that, through other strategies, and that it might be occurring in also the plan. So I'm hoping that's covered most of it. It was a very, very rich conversation.
Sounds amazing. And I just wanted to ask you, Debs, you know, your group is so prepared in its strategic thinking. You've already got an incredible strategic document about how your group wanted to work that you started work on last year. And I'm just wondering how it felt to explore that already well-developed thinking within this new framework. How did that go?
Well, it was interesting. We did pick up on things saying, well, we've already got this in the work stream, this is already active, or we haven't done much on this, so we can pick this up. But we're also conscious that our group has expanded slightly to include more issues around sequestration. So we need to think about that. But we were too busy talking probably to actually examine that. From my perspective, don't want to lose the work that we've already done. So I think we brought that with us, and I think our strategy is not too far off what these kind of things are if I look at it more clearly, but maybe others might have a comment on that from the group, I don't know.
Awesome. Thank you. That's really helpful. And on that vein, I'm going to invite you to do a chat storm, or maybe called a chat waterfall, says Jessie, which is lovely and I prefer. So we'll go with a chat waterfall. How was that experience for you in terms of how clear was it, or how easy was it to work with as a framework for thinking about your actions? How I'm struggling to frame the question here. How confident do you feel about using this framework over the next few months to get your groups going? That's the question. Assuming that your groups aren't already going. If they are, then the question's slightly different and more in line with what I just asked Debs. So that's the question about this framework in terms of those 4 action categories and making a plan to go forwards over the next 12 months. Something about that, very unhelpfully worded, sorry. Your minute starts now. Remember to hold off on pressing go till the end. A few more seconds to finish off your thought. Okay, press go. Okay, thank you. That's really helpful for us to begin thinking about how you might need support in using this framework going forwards, because as your groups get underway, this is going to be where you're working, and so we need to figure out how we can help. Okay, so just a few minutes left till we close. The first thing to note is that we're going to need to figure out how we can all work together within this framework. And so we'll be taking on board the actions that you've just given us. We'll be asking for more actions as more people engage in the conversation. We'll be thinking about what roles will be needed within your groups to help those actions get underway, what support you'll need from other groups and so on. So that's all in the mix over the next few months of work as a whole forum, but please don't wait. Get going with this stuff. As soon as your group feels happy to do it, just go for it. You know, all of the strategic thinking must happen in parallel with action. So please get underway and go for it. Second thing before we close is the long-term plan submissions. If you are a current group coordinator, you should have had an email from me that invites you to feed into the draft submission that has been written. That's going to go out to everybody on Friday. So please take the time to feed into that draft, and then it will be tidied up and sent off after that, following a consensus or consent check with the signatories of our charter. So that's the process to go through from now. Also in the agenda are links to both the Nelson City Council and the Tasman District Council submission page. Feel free to use what we've written in our submission for your own personal submissions, as well as, of course, having your own ideas. Climate change is a focus of the Tasman District Council one in particular. It has a choice question, which invites us to say whether we want TDC to invest more quickly. And it would be great to have a resounding chorus of yes, get on with it from the Nelson Tasman region. So if you're willing to take the time to add your personal voice, that would be amazing. Okay, another chat storm, please. Chat waterfall on this time of day for meetings before we close. You know, this forum was modelled off the Nelson Biodiversity Forum, which meets once a quarter on a weekday morning. When the Climate Forum opened, we wanted it to be accessible to people who work and didn't have the option to take time off work. So we added evenings and weekends as well. As well as keeping the daytime meetings. But we have heard that there is a question about how useful it is and how important it is to keep work day ones open and accessible for people who do this as part of their work and don't want to take the extra time in their non-working hours. So you are the people here at this time, and so I just wanted to have a quick chat waterfall that says how important is it to you that we keep weekday meetings happening? So that's the question. How important is it to you that we keep weekday meetings happening in the forum? So I'll do a shorter one, just a 30 seconds on that response, please, starting now. Just to clarify, I'm not talking about evenings, daytime, weekday. Thanks. Just a few more seconds. Okay, press go. Thank you very much. And we'll have a look at those answers and get back to you about where we plan to go from here. After our Mehui. Thank you very much. So our next meeting is going to be face-to-face. We had planned for it to be at the Te Awhina Marae, but unfortunately that isn't working out. So we are looking for a new venue, TBD, so keep an eye out for that change of venue. If you have any thoughts about where in Tasman particularly would be a great meeting venue that isn't too expensive, we would really love for you to pop that in the chat before you leave, please. But otherwise it is 12 o'clock, so I'm going to close off. I will stick around for 15 minutes afterwards to catch up with anyone who wants to catch up with me. That's fine.
Just before we close, Julie, there was one really important question from Debs in the chat about how can she contact like new group members who might have joined today, or just to generally keep in touch.
Yeah.
And that's where I just want to put in a plug for the website. I've dropped the link into the chat. If you're not already on it, the idea of the website is to act as a hub for groups. So if you're wanting to get new members or find people, the more people we can get onto the website, the easier it is to have that one central place, rather than, particularly when we don't yet have identified coordinators for all of the groups. That central place of the website is probably the best place to put if you want to use a form for your group or something to gather email addresses. If you want to communicate using email, if you can try to do that through the website, it'll make it really open for everyone. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Jessie. Okay, would anyone like to close us with a karakia?
I can dash and get one.
Debs, please do.
Yeah, I can do
Thanks.
one. Kia whakaria te tapu, kia wate ai te ara, kia turuki whakataha ai, kia turuki whakataha ai, homie, huie, tai kia.
Okay.
Which means restrictions are now moved aside so the pathway is clear for us to return to everyday activities. Kia ora.
Nice. And thank you everybody for being here, and enjoy the rest of your activities for today. It's lovely to see you all.
Thank
Kia
you.
ora.
Thanks for finishing on time. I love timing meetings.
Do my best.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks,
Really?
Julie and Jessie.
Yeah, really sorry to hear Te Awhina is not going to work. Riverside?
Yeah, we thought about that. And we could certainly do that. It's just not as accessible